Have you ever seen a ghost pour your coffee? Not a specter in a white sheet, but someone you buried in your mind years ago, standing there, alive, scarred, and silent. Caleb Miller felt that jolt one Tuesday morning in a small Ohio diner. His hands froze around a chipped mug, eyes locked on the waitress's arm, where burns twisted like a map of pain. Beneath those scars, half hidden, was a tattoo he'd seen in a war zone. A number, a unit, a memory of a woman who ran through fire to save lives. She was supposed to be dead. Yet here she was, serving eggs and enduring cruelty with a stillness that made Caleb's heart pound. This wasn't just a reunion. It was the start of something bigger, something that would unravel secrets and shake the ground beneath them all. If stories like this speak to you, hit the like button and subscribe. There's more to come. Caleb sat in the corner booth, his duffel bag slumped beside him like a tired soldier. He was 42, broad-shouldered, with gray creeping into his short, cropped hair. The road had worn him down, miles of asphalt, cheap modals, and memories of Iraq that never quite faded. He'd stopped at Ray's Diner for a quick coffee before moving on, just another traveler in a nowhere town. But now he couldn't move. His fork lay untouched, his eyes glued to the waitress as she glided between tables. Sarah Thompson, her name tag read, but Caleb knew better. That tattoo, that stance, shoulders square, weight balanced, hands ready but calm. It was her. It had to be. He'd called her Jess back then, short for Jessica, the combat medic who'd pulled him from a burning Humvee in Fallujah. She'd saved 5 men that night before the explosion that supposedly took her life. No body, just blood and smoke. He'd mourned her, carried her name like a stone in his chest. Yet here she was, refilling cups in a polyester uniform. Across the diner, a man's voice cut through the hum of conversation. "Look who's here, Freddy Krueger's picking up a shift." Lauder followed, sharp and mean, from a booth where 4 men sat. The leader, Mark Larson, leaned back, his expensive watch glinting as he waved an empty mug. "Hey, monster, more coffee. Don't melt the cup with those crispy hands." His wingman, Ethan Cole, snickered, always a beat behind, like a bad echo. The other 2, polished corporate types, chuckled but shifted uncomfortably. Sarah didn't flinch. She walked over, her long sleeves rolled just to the wrist, scars snaking up from her knuckles. "Good morning," she said, her voice steady as she poured. "Black, no sugar." Mark's smirk flickered. He didn't like that she didn't break. "She remembers," Ethan muttered. Fireproof memory. Sarah moved to the next mug, then the next, her hands never trembling. Caleb watched, his coffee going cold. He'd seen burns before, worse ones in the sandbox. But it wasn't the scars that held him. It was the ink, the curve of a number he'd memorized in a war zone. It was Jess. Mark leaned back, boots propped on the booth. "So Sarah, what was it?" "Meth lab explosion. Romantic bonfire gone wrong. More laughs, thinner now." A few heads turned in the diner, but no one spoke up. Sarah's lips curved, not a smile, but something sharper. "Neither. Thanks for the theories, though." Mark's eyes narrowed. He didn't like defiance, even polite defiance. Ethan jumped in. "Bet she cooked something up in her little ghetto kitchen." Kaboom. Sarah capped the coffee pot. "Enjoy your breakfast, gentlemen." She turned, and Caleb stood, his chair scraping the floor. "Excuse me," he said, stepping toward her. Her eyes met his, cautious but unflinching. He saw it then. Not just the tattoo, but the way she stood, like a soldier who wasn't sure she was home. "Ma'am, where'd you serve?" Her gaze tightened. "Sir, can I help you with something?" "First Infantry Division, Big Red 1, Fallujah. I knew a medic named Jess. She saved 5 guys before a Humvee blew." The diner's noise faded. Sarah's eyes held his for 1 second, 2, 3. "Jess," he said again, "that was you." She didn't answer right away. Her voice dropped low. "Have you ever seen someone die, then pour your coffee years later?" Caleb sat back down, hands flat on the table. Mark, oblivious, was filming now, his phone angled at Sarah. "Check out the crispy waitress at our favorite diner, boys." Sarah turned, her voice like steel. "Save that for court." Mark laughed. Ethan laughed louder. Caleb didn't. He was watching a soldier brace for war, and this war wasn't in the desert. Sarah didn't speak to him again for the next 20 minutes. She moved through the diner with the same grace she'd once used in field hospitals, assessing, calculating. Caleb saw it in her eyes. She was planning. Mark kept recording, Ethan egging him on, their laughter grating. The other 2 men in their booth looked less certain now, their smiles fading. The diner's air had shifted, even if they didn't know it yet. A family of 5 walked in, and Sarah greeted them with a warm smile, handing out menace like nothing had happened. But Caleb saw her glance at Mark, quick, deliberate. She was waiting for something. Mark wasn't done. "Hey, Sarah," Smile for my followers. She turned slowly. Sir, I'm working. Work that charm, baby, or I start tipping based on skin tone. The words landed heavy. Even Ethan's laugh faltered. Sarah walked over, notepad in hand. Mr. Larson, if you keep recording without consent, I'll ask you to stop. You'll what? You're just a waitress. Actually, Tom Rivera said from behind the counter, Ohio law says otherwise. Tom, the manager, didn't move, but his eyes said he wasn't asking twice. Mark scoffed, waved a hand, and turned back to his phone. Come on, Sarah. Smile. That's all you're good for. Then a man in a nearby booth coughed, sharp. His wife gasped. Sarah dropped her notepad, crossed the diner in 2 strides. Sir, can you breathe? He shook his head. I'm doing the Heimlich. 1, 2, 3. On the 3rd thrust, a piece of bacon flew out. The man gasped, collapsing into the booth. Applause broke out. Sarah checked his pulse, calm as ever. You're okay. Just breathe slow. The wife grabbed her hand. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sarah nodded and stood, turning to Mark's booth. Her eyes were different now. Gentlemen, need anything else? No one spoke. She walked away, and Caleb knew this was just the beginning. Sarah moved through Ray's diner like a shadow that refused to fade, her apron tied tight, her steps deliberate. The Tuesday crowd buzzed with its usual rhythm. Forks clinking, coffee steaming, voices blending into a low hum. But Caleb's eyes never left her. He sat in his corner booth, duffel bag at his feet, watching the way she navigated the space. Not as a waitress, but as a tactician. Every glance, every pause, every subtle shift in her posture told him she was more than the scars Mark Larson mocked. She was a soldier, and she was gathering intel. Mark's booth was louder than the rest, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. Look at her, Ethan, hustling like she's still got something to prove. But those burns make her feel real special. Ethan's laugh was forced, a weak echo. The other 2 men in their group, suits with glossy watches, shifted, their smiles thinning. Sarah poured water for a nearby table, her hands steady, but Caleb caught the flicker in her eyes. Not fear, calculation. She was counting breaths, waiting for the right moment to strike. Mark leaned forward, his mug raised like a gavel. Hey, Sarah, ever think about plastic surgery? Might make you less distracting. The diner quieted, heads turning, but no one spoke. Sarah capped the coffee pot, her voice even. I'm comfortable with my skin, Mr. Larson. You should try it sometime. The jab was soft, but it landed. Mark's smirk faltered, his fingers tightening around the mug. Ethan tried to salvage it. She's got jokes now. Tough girl. Sarah turned away, her lips twitching. Not a smile, but a signal she'd scored a point. Caleb leaned back, his own coffee untouched. He'd seen that look before, in Fallujah, when Jess sized up a battlefield. She wasn't breaking. She was building something. Mark didn't notice. He was too busy scrolling through his phone, muttering to Ethan. This place needs better staff. Someone who doesn't look like they crawled out of a fire pit. Ethan nodded, but his eyes darted to Sarah, uneasy. The diner's air felt heavier now, like the moment before a storm. Sarah cleared a table near the window, stacking plates with precision. A family of 3 thanked her, their toddler waving a crayon. She nodded, her face softening for a moment, but her gaze flicked to Mark's booth. Caleb saw it. She was tracking them, memorizing their patterns. Every Tuesday, same booth, same ritual of cruelty. But today, her silence felt different. It wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Caleb's mind raced, piecing together the fragments. The tattoo, the scars, the way she stood. Jess hadn't just survived. She'd reinvented herself, and whatever she was planning, it was bigger than this diner. Mark's voice broke through again. Tell you what, Sarah, I'd tip better if you didn't make me lose my appetite. Ethan laughed, but the other 2 men didn't. One of them, younger with nervous eyes, set his fork down. Sarah walked over, notepad in hand. Anything else, gentlemen? Her tone was polite, but her eyes were a challenge. Mark leaned back. Just keep the coffee coming, sweetheart. And maybe smile. It's not like you've got much else going for you. Sarah didn't respond. She turned, her apron brushing the counter as she passed Caleb. Their eyes met for a split second, and he saw it again, that fire banked but burning. She wasn't ignoring Mark. She was studying him, the way a soldier studies terrain. Caleb's gut twisted. He knew that look. It was the prelude to a fight, not with fists but with something sharper. He shifted in his seat, his fingers tapping the table. He wanted to stand to say something, but her glance told him to stay put. She didn't need a rescuer, she needed a witness. The bell above the door jingled, and an older woman, Doris, walked in. She was a regular, sharp-eyed, always at the counter with a newspaper. She nodded at Sarah, then glared at Mark's booth. Caleb caught her muttering under her breath. About time someone shut them up. Sarah poured her coffee without a word, but Doris leaned in. You're tougher than they think, girl. Keep going. Sarah's hand paused just for a moment, then she nodded. Thanks, Doris. Mark wasn't done. He pulled out his phone again, angling it at Sarah as she wiped down a table. This is what you get at Ray's, folks. Service with a side of scar tissue. Ethan snorted, but the younger guy in their booth looked away, his jaw tight. Sarah straightened, her voice cutting through. You might want to check Ohio law before you post that, Mr. Larson. Mark laughed, loud and hollow. Ohio law, you're a waitress, not a lawyer. Tom Rivera appeared behind the counter, his voice calm but firm. She's right. Keep it up, and you're out. Mark waved him off, but his laughter died when he saw Tom's eyes. The manager wasn't bluffing. Sarah moved on, clearing another table, her movements smooth but deliberate. Caleb watched, his mind turning. She wasn't just enduring this, she was documenting it. Every word, every insult, every smirk. He could see it in the way her eyes scanned the booth, the way her fingers brushed her apron pocket, where a phone might be. She was building a case. The diner's rhythm picked up. More customers, more noise. A trucker at the counter asked for pie. A couple near the window debated the menu. But Caleb's focus stayed on Sarah. She was a puzzle he couldn't stop solving. How had she ended up here, hiding in plain sight? Why hadn't she reached out after Fallujah? He remembered the night she disappeared. Flames, smoke, the chaos of a raid gone wrong. They'd found blood, but no body. The unit mourned her, carved her name into their memories. Yet here she was, taking hits from men like Mark without blinking. It wasn't weakness, it was discipline. He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, trying to catch her eye again. She didn't look his way, but he felt her awareness, like she knew exactly where he was. Mark's voice rose again. Bet she's got a sob story. War vet, bad luck, blah blah. People eat that up. Ethan nodded. Yeah, but who's buying it? She's just a nobody now. Sarah's back stiffened, but she didn't turn. Caleb's fists clenched under the table. He wanted to stand, to shut them up, but Sarah's earlier glance held him back. This was her fight, her rules. As the hour passed, the diner's mood shifted. Regulars started watching Mark's booth, their stares harder now. Doris muttered to the trucker, who nodded, his jaw tight. A woman at a nearby table whispered to her husband, her eyes on Sarah. The air was changing, and Mark didn't see it. He was too busy filming, too busy laughing. Sarah moved to the back, near the kitchen, and Caleb caught a glimpse of her hand slipping into her apron. She pulled out a phone, tapped it quickly, then tucked it away. His pulse quickened. She was recording, not just enduring but weaponizing their words. He leaned back, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Jess was still in there, the medic who never left a man behind. Now she was saving herself. The bell jingled again and a new customer walked in. A man in a faded jacket, his eyes scanning the room. He sat near Caleb, ordered coffee, and watched Sarah with a quiet intensity. Caleb's instincts flared. Another ghost. Sarah poured the man's coffee, her face unreadable. The man nodded almost imperceptibly. Caleb's mind raced. Whatever Sarah was planning, it wasn't just about Mark. It was about all of them. The diner, the town, the war they'd all brought home. And she wasn't fighting alone. The air in Ray's diner hung thick, like the pause before a grenade pin drops. Sarah moved between tables, her apron a quiet armor, her scars a map of battles no one in Mark Larson's booth could fathom. Caleb watched from his corner, his coffee long cold, his eyes tracing her every step. She wasn't just serving. She was circling like a soldier scoping a target. Mark's laughter grated, his phone still angled at her, filming another cruel clip. Look at her hustle, Ethan. Like she's auditioning for a horror flick. Ethan's chuckle was weaker now, his eyes darting to the other customers who weren't laughing. The younger guy in their booth, Nate, stared at his plate, fork still. Sarah poured coffee for a family nearby, her hands steady, but Caleb saw the tension in her jaw. She was close to something, a breaking point or a turning point. He leaned forward, his gut telling him to stay ready. Mark leaned back, his voice louder, fishing for attention. Hey, Sarah, ever think about a desk job? Oh, wait, nobody'd hire that face. Ethan snorted, but the diner's hum faltered. Doris, the sharp-eyed regular at the counter, set her newspaper down, her glare cutting across the room. A trucker nearby muttered under his breath, his knuckles white around a mug. Sarah didn't respond. She cleared a table, stacking plates with the precision of someone who'd once packed medical kits under fire. Caleb's mind flashed to Fallujah, Jess kneeling in the dirt, her hands steady as bullets screamed past. That same calm was here, but it was sharper now, edged with purpose. Mark didn't see it. He was too busy scrolling through his phone, muttering to Ethan. She's a walking liability. Bet this place tanks because of her. Nate, the quiet one, shifted uncomfortably. Maybe ease up, man, he said, voice low. Mark shot him a look. What, you're on her side now? Nate didn't answer, just looked away. Sarah moved to the back, near the kitchen, her eyes scanning the room. Caleb caught her glance at Mark's booth, quick but deliberate, like she was marking coordinates. Her hand brushed her apron pocket, where he knew her phone was. She was still recording, still building her case. But something in her posture told him she was ready for more than evidence. The diner's rhythm shifted. A baby cried, a spoon clinked, and then a sharp cough broke the air. It came from a booth across the aisle, where an older man, mid-60s, clutched his throat. His wife gasped, standing, her hands fluttering. He's choking, she cried. The diner froze. Mark lowered his phone, his smirk gone. Ethan's eyes widened. Sarah dropped her tray, plates clattering, and crossed the room in 3 strides. Sir, can you breathe? She asked, her voice calm but commanding. The man shook his head, his face reddening. She slid behind him, arms wrapping his torso. I'm performing the Heimlich. 1, 2, 3. On the 3rd thrust, a chunk of sausage flew out, landing on the table. The man gasped, slumping forward, his wife sobbing in relief. Applause erupted, tentative at first, then louder. Sarah checked his pulse, her fingers swift on his wrist. You're okay, she said gently. Breathe slow, sip some water. The wife grabbed her hand. God bless you, thank you. Sarah nodded, stepping back, her face composed but her eyes alive with something new. Caleb leaned forward, his heart racing. He'd seen her save lives before, but this was different. This was public, undeniable. Mark's booth was silent. Ethan's phone was down. Nate stared at Sarah, his jaw slack. Even Mark looked rattled, his fingers twitching on the table. The diner's energy had shifted, the crowd now watching Sarah with a mix of awe and respect. Doris clapped slowly, her eyes gleaming. That's how you do it, she muttered. Tom Rivera, behind the counter, nodded at Sarah, his face unreadable but proud. She turned to him. Comp their meal. He nodded. Don't. Sarah walked back toward Mark's booth, her steps deliberate. Gentlemen, she said, her voice crisp. Need anything else? Mark's lips moved, but no words came. Ethan looked away. Nate shook his head, almost respectful. Sarah's lips curved. A thin smile that wasn't for them. Didn't think so, she said, turning away. Caleb stood, intercepting her near the counter. That was textbook, he said. Clinical, perfect form. Her eyes met his, steady but guarded. 3 tours, you don't forget. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. Jess, you're still her. Still am, she said, but not many know it. Why didn't you say anything all this time? Would they have listened? Caleb didn't answer. He knew they wouldn't. You died, he said finally. I disappeared, she corrected. The fire took everything, no papers, no proof, just scars. He swallowed hard, remembering the smoke, the silence after the blast. I saw you run into that fire. We thought you were gone. Her eyes softened, but only for a moment. Parts of me were, she said. Tom approached, breaking the moment. Everything okay? Sarah nodded. For now. Tom glanced at Caleb. You're not with them, right? God, no, Caleb said. Good, Tom replied, because I like my floors clean. Mark's voice cut through again, quieter now, but still venomous. Place needs new waitresses, ones without Frankenstein arms. The diner turned, a collective intake of breath. Sarah paused, her back to him, then took a slow breath. Back to work, she said, her voice low. Caleb hesitated, his fists clenching. They won't stop, he said. I know, she replied. So, what's the play? She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes sharp. You'll see, she walked back toward Mark's booth. Not as a victim, but as someone who just reminded the room who she was. Caleb watched, his pulse steady now. He'd been wrong before. This wasn't a breaking point. It was a turning point. Sarah wasn't just enduring Mark's cruelty. She was dismantling it, piece by piece, and the diner was her battlefield. She took their order, her pen moving with the same precision she'd used to save a life moments ago. Mark tried to laugh it off, muttering to Ethan, but his voice lacked its earlier bite. The other customers weren't listening to him anymore. They were watching Sarah, some whispering, some nodding. Doris leaned toward the trucker. She's got more guts than all of them combined, she said. The trucker nodded, his eyes on Sarah. Damn right. Sarah moved to the kitchen, her apron brushing the counter as she passed Caleb again. Their eyes met, and this time she didn't look away. Meet me out back, she said, her voice barely audible. 10 minutes, Caleb nodded, his mind racing. He grabbed his duffel, left a few bills on the table, and stepped outside. The alley behind the diner was narrow, shadowed by brick walls and a rusty dumpster. A cool breeze cut through, carrying the scent of grease and coffee. Caleb leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, waiting. Sarah emerged, tying her apron tighter, her sleeves pushed up now. The scars caught the sunlight, raw and unapologetic, but so did the tattoo. You still remember the unit code? He asked. She nodded. Muscle memory, it's all still there. Part of you, he said. All of me, she replied, just buried. They stood in silence, the weight of years between them. I thought you were dead, Caleb said. I was supposed to be, she answered, her voice steady but heavy. He nodded, understanding more than he wanted to. Whatever she was planning, it wasn't just about Mark. It was about reclaiming what the fire had tried to take. And Caleb knew, standing in that alley, that he wasn't just a witness anymore. He was in this fight too. The alley behind Ray's diner smelled of damp brick and yesterday's grease. But to Caleb, it was a command post. Sarah stood across from him, her scars catching the morning light, her eyes sharp with the kind of focus he'd seen in war zones. She wasn't just a waitress anymore, not to him. She was Jess, the medic who'd run through fire, and now she was running a different kind of mission. The diner's back door creaked shut behind her, muffling the clatter of dishes and the low hum of voices. Caleb shifted his weight, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder. You've been recording them for months, haven't you? He said, his voice low. Sarah nodded, her fingers brushing the phone in her apron pocket. Every Tuesday, every word. They think I'm too broken to listen, but I've got it all. He leaned forward, his pulse quickening. And now I have a witness, she said, her gaze steady. Two if you're in. Caleb didn't hesitate. I'm in. They moved back inside, the diner's warmth wrapping around them like a second skin. Sarah slipped behind the counter, pouring coffee for a regular, her movements fluid but deliberate. Caleb took his booth, his eyes scanning Mark Larson's table. Mark was back to his usual swagger, phone out, muttering to Ethan about some new contract. Streamlining payroll, he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Fewer lawsuits this time. Learned from last year's mess. Ethan grinned. Cultural mismatch, right? Not race. Mark nodded, oblivious to Sarah, who was wiping a table 2 steps away, her phone recording every syllable. Caleb's jaw tightened. They weren't just mocking her. They were spilling secrets, and she was catching every drop. He caught her eye, a silent nod passing between them. This wasn't just about insults anymore. It was about power, and Sarah was flipping the board. That night, after the diner closed, Sarah and Caleb sat in the back office, a dim lamp casting shadows on the walls. Tom Rivera had given them the space, no questions asked. Sarah pulled out her phone, uploading files to a secure drive, audio clips, video snippets, timestamps. Mark's voice crackled through the speaker. Productivity gaps, that's the phrase. Never say diversity issues. Caleb shook his head, his fists clenching. They're teaching people how to fire without getting sued. Sarah nodded, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she labeled each file. Harassment, retaliation, discriminatory intent. I've got 6 months of this, she said. Client names, contract slurs. Enough to burn them down. Caleb leaned back, his mind racing. You need someone to amplify this. Someone with reach. Sarah looked up, her eyes narrowing. Got anyone in mind? He nodded. Emily Carter, journalist. She owes me a favor from a story I helped her break in Syria. She's not about clicks. She's about truth. The next morning, Emily walked into Ray's diner, her notebook tucked under one arm, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk. She was mid-30s, wary, with a pressed blazer and a quiet intensity that made people straighten up. She took a seat near the front, ordered coffee, and opened her notebook. Sarah poured, their eyes meeting for a split second. No words, just understanding. Emily wasn't here for breakfast. She was here for war. Caleb slid into the booth across from her, keeping his voice low. You've got the files. Emily nodded, patting her bag. Reviewed them last night. It's dynamite, but we need to move fast. Once this breaks, they'll come for her. Caleb glanced at Sarah, who was refilling cups across the room. She can handle it, he said. Emily raised an eyebrow. She's not just handling it. She's orchestrating it. Sarah moved through the diner, her routine unchanged but her purpose electric. Mark's booth was in full form, his voice carrying as he bragged about a new client. Phase 2, he said, waving a fork. Biggest deal we've got. Total restructuring. Ethan leaned in, smirking. More creative firings. Mark grinned, you know it. Sarah jotted a fake order nearby, her phone catching every word. Caleb watched, his heart pounding. She wasn't just collecting evidence. She was baiting them, drawing them out. Emily scribbled in her notebook, her pen moving fast. At 10:03, Mark's phone rang. He stood excusing himself. Big client, boys, he said, stepping outside. Sarah followed to the counter, casual but deliberate. Caleb joined her. He's about to get hit, he said. Emily. Sarah nodded, her lips twitching. She published an open letter. Went live 3 minutes ago. Clips. Audio names policies. Headlines: a killer. Waitress exposes corporate discrimination with 6 months of proof. Outside, Mark's voice rose, sharp and panicked. What do you mean, under review? We've been your consultants for 2 years. A pause. What post? That's fake. It's edited. Another pause, then louder. She's just a waitress. Inside, phones buzzed. Nate, the quiet one in Mark's booth, looked down, his face paling. Guys were tagged in something. Ethan grabbed his phone, his jaw dropping. She posted it. Everything. Client names, contracts, quotes. Sarah walked back to their booth, her voice calm. Gentlemen, need anything else? Maybe some humility. No one laughed. Tom appeared beside her, his arms crossed. Need backup. She shook her head. They're already surrounded. The diner hummed with whispers. Phones lighting up, eyes turning to Mark's booth. Even the cooks watched through the order window. Mark stormed back in, his face red. You think this is funny? You want to ruin lives? Sarah faced him, unflinching. No, Mr. Larson. I want to stop people from ruining others. Caleb stood, his voice cutting through. She's a combat medic, 3 tours, Bronze Star. More courage than you'll ever know. Mark hissed. You're all insane. This is slander? Emily rose, her voice cool. It's evidence, Mr. Larson. I'm Emily Carter. You'll need a lawyer. The diner erupted, not in cheers, but in attention. Every phone was up, every eye on Mark. He froze, then bolted, the door slamming behind him. Sarah exhaled, her shoulders loosening for the first time all day. Caleb stepped closer. War's not over, he said. She nodded. But we just won a battle. Emily approached, extending a hand. Sergeant Thompson, your silence just became the loudest thing online. Sarah shook her hand, firm and steady. The room didn't cheer, but it respected. Outside, Mark's phone kept ringing, but the world had shifted. Sarah wasn't invisible anymore. She was a force, and Caleb knew this was only the start. They sat that night, the 3 of them. Sarah, Caleb, Emily, in the diner's back office, mapping the next steps. Emily's article was spreading, picking up traction across platforms. Comments flooded in, veterans sharing their own stories, civilians calling for accountability. Sarah stared at her phone, her face unreadable. This is bigger than me now, she said. Emily nodded. That's why it matters. Caleb leaned forward, his voice low. What's the next move? Sarah looked up, her eyes burning. We don't stop, we build. They left the office just before midnight. The diner dark except for the glow of the honor wall, where a single photo hung, Sarah's unit, before the fire. Caleb paused, his hand on the door. You're not alone in this, Jess. She nodded, her voice soft. I know. And that's why we'll win. The fallout from Emily's article hit Ray's diner like a shockwave, but Sarah moved through it with the calm of a soldier who'd seen worse. The Tuesday crowd was thicker now, not just regulars but newcomers. Veterans, locals, even a few reporters pretending to sip coffee. Caleb sat in his booth, his eyes scanning the room, his duffel bag tucked close. The honor wall? Just a single photo a week ago, now held dog tags and a faded unit patch, tributes left by those who'd heard Sarah's story. Mark Larson's booth was empty, but the air still carried his shadow. Sarah poured coffee, her apron crisp, her scars visible under rolled-up sleeves. She wasn't hiding anymore. Caleb watched her, his chest tight with pride and worry. The world was listening, but predators don't slink away quietly. He knew Mark would come back, and when he did, it wouldn't be alone. The morning passed in a hum of whispers and clinking mugs. Doris, the sharp-eyed regular, leaned over the counter, her newspaper folded. They're calling you a hero online, she told Sarah. About time. Sarah nodded, her lips twitching. Heroes don't serve coffee, Doris. Doris snorted. They do if the coffee's this good. Sarah's laugh was brief, but real, a sound Caleb hadn't heard in years. He sipped his own coffee, his mind turning. Emily's article had named names, quoted contracts, exposed Mark's firm, Larson & Cole Consulting, for what it was, a machine built on coded firings and quiet discrimination. Clients were dropping them, sponsors pulling funds. Social media churned with hashtags. Veteran truth fits the scars. But Caleb knew the louder the truth, the harder the pushback. His phone buzzed, a text from Emily. He's back in town. Not alone. Stay sharp. Caleb's jaw tightened. He glanced at Sarah, who was clearing a table, her phone tucked in her apron. She was ready, but he wasn't taking chances. At 11:14 a.m., the bell above the door jingled. Mark Larson walked in, not with his usual swagger, but with a calculated calm. Behind him came a camera crew. 2 men, one with a lens the size of a cannon, the other adjusting a mic. Mark wore a blazer, no tie, his face shaved but tired. The diner stilled, forks pausing, eyes turning. Sarah didn't look up, just kept wiping a table, her movements steady. Caleb stood, his chair scraping softly, positioning himself near the counter. Mark raised his hands, palms out, like a man surrendering. I'm here to clear my name, he said, loud enough for the cameras. Fake news has gone too far. This woman lied, staged it all, burned scars for sympathy. The words landed like a slap, but the diner didn't flinch. Sarah straightened, her eyes meeting Mark's, unflinching. Caleb stepped forward. You're not welcome here, he said. Mark turned, his smile thin. Public access, private property. You see this, folks? Cancel culture at work. He faced the cameras, his voice rising. She's a fraud and I'm the victim. The room stayed quiet, but it wasn't fear. It was something heavier, like the calm before a squad moves in. A veteran at the counter, mid-50s, with a prosthetic arm, stood slowly. I saw her pull a man from a burning wreck in Ramadi, he said. Her arm caught fire, she didn't stop. Mark turned, his smirk faltering. Another veteran rose, a woman with a cane. She saved my brother in Fallujah, took shrapnel to keep him breathing. A third stood, then a fourth. By the time the 12th spoke, a young Marine, barely 25, his voice steady. Mark's face was pale. She carried me out of a blast zone. I wouldn't be here without her. The cameras kept rolling, catching every word. Sarah stepped forward, her voice clear, not loud, but piercing. I didn't burn for sympathy, Mr. Larson. I earned these scars saving men who thought their lives were over. You built a company on fear. Now you're afraid of a waitress. That's the real story. Mark's mouth opened, but no words came. The camera crew hesitated, one lowering his lens. Ethan, still in the booth, looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. Nate, the quiet one, stood and walked out, his head down. The diner's air crackled, not with violence, but with truth. Sarah turned to the cameras. Record that, she said. Let it scale. Mark tried to laugh, but it came out weak. You'll hear from my lawyers. He turned, shoving past the crew, and fled. The door slammed behind him. Caleb exhaled, his fist unclenching. Emily slipped in, her notebook already open. That was a masterclass, she told Sarah. It's live, streaming now. Sarah nodded, her face composed but her eyes alive. Good, let it spread. The diner didn't cheer, but the veterans clapped. A slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. Doris raised her mug. To Sarah, she said. The room echoed, to Sarah. That afternoon, the diner buzzed with new faces. Veterans arrived, some in wheelchairs, others with faded jackets, their eyes carrying stories they didn't need to tell. They sat, ordered coffee, and watched Sarah, not as a spectacle, but as one of their own. A man in his 60s, with a silver star pinned to his cap, approached her. You carried my son out, he said. Never forgot you. Sarah blinked fast, her voice soft, glad he made it home. The man tapped his cane twice, a salute. Caleb watched, his throat tight. This wasn't just about Mark anymore. It was about every soldier who'd been erased, every scar dismissed. Sarah was giving them a voice, and they were giving her theirs. Emily sat in a booth, typing furiously, her phone pinging with updates. It's at 2 million views, she called to Sarah, and climbing. Sarah nodded, pouring coffee for a new arrival. Let it climb, she said. We're not done. By evening, the threats started. Anonymous emails, a fake Yelp review calling Sarah a fraud. One message had her face photoshopped onto a target. She forwarded it to Emily without a word. Caleb installed a second camera outside, his hands steady but his mind racing. They're scared, he told Sarah, which means they're dangerous. She nodded, tying her apron for the late shift. Then we stay sharper. Tom Rivera boarded up a window that had been cracked by a stray rock, his face grim. This place is a fortress now, he said. Sarah smiled faintly. Always was. That night they met in the back office, the three of them, Sarah, Caleb, Emily, plotting the next steps. Emily's network was expanding, connecting with veteran advocates, civil rights lawyers, even a senator's aide. We're not just taking down a company, Emily said. We're rewriting the rules. Sarah leaned back, her eyes tired but burning. Then let's write them in ink. Caleb nodded, his hand resting on the table, close to hers. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The diner's lights dimmed, but the honor wall glowed, a testament to those who'd stood with Sarah. And outside, the world was waking up to her name. Ray's Diner had become more than a roadside stop in Ohio. It was a beacon, its hand-painted sign glowing under dawn's first light. Sarah moved through the morning rush, her apron swapped for a simple button down, sleeves rolled up, scars unhidden. The honor wall, now 3 panels deep, held photos, letters, and a child's crayon drawing of a woman with a coffee pot and a medal. Caleb sat at the counter, his duffel bag gone, replaced by a briefcase stuffed with legal documents. The air hummed with purpose. Veterans sharing stories, locals leaving notes. reporters lingering for scraps of Sarah's next move. She poured coffee for a young Marine, his eyes haunted but hopeful. "You're why I came here," he said, "to be seen." Sarah nodded, her voice soft. "You are." The world outside was still reeling from her stand against Mark Larson, but inside, she was building something bigger. Caleb caught her eye, a silent question. She nodded. They both knew the fight wasn't over, but the battlefield had shifted. The invitation from the Senate Subcommittee on Veterans Affairs arrived a week after Mark's public unraveling. Sarah stood in the diner's back office, the letter in her hand, her jaw tight. Caleb leaned against the doorframe. "Capitol Hill," he said, "big leagues." She folded the paper, her voice steady. Same war, different terrain. They flew to D.C. 2 days later. Sarah in pressed slacks and combat boots, Caleb carrying their evidence. Videos, transcripts, Emily's articles. The Capitol's marble halls echoed with power. But Sarah walked them like she'd walked Fallujah's streets, alert, unflinching. Veterans in suits nodded as she passed, one whispering, "You're her." She nodded back, her focus on the hearing room ahead. The chamber was stark, cameras mounted, 7 senators waiting, some curious, some skeptical. Sarah sat, her nameplate reading Sergeant Sarah Thompson. The chair's voice was formal. "We appreciate your presence. Sergeant, tell us your story." She took a breath, then began. "I served 3 tours as a combat medic. I pulled men from burning wrecks, patched wounds under fire, made peace with dying. But coming home broke me in ways war never did." Her words carried weight, not anger but truth. "I was invisible, a waitress with scars people mocked or ignored. They called me names, filmed me, laughed. I stayed silent, not out of fear, but training, endure. But 6 months ago I started recording. Every insult, every confession of how they fired veterans, people of color, anyone who didn't fit their mold." A senator, silver-haired, leaned forward. "How did they react when you exposed them?" Sarah's eyes didn't waver. "They tried to destroy me. Threats, smears, intimidation. I kept serving coffee. I kept recording." The room murmured. Another senator, arms crossed, tapped his pen. "Is this systemic, or just your case?" "If it was just me," she said, "you wouldn't need this hearing." The chair nodded, a faint smile breaking through. "Fair point." Sarah slid a folder forward. "These are their words. Executives teaching how to fire without lawsuits, using code like cultural mismatch. It's not one company. It's a playbook." The silence that followed was heavy, the senators' faces shifting from doubt to focus. "Thank you," she said, standing. Caleb followed, his pride quiet but fierce. A staffer handed Sarah a pin, Senate Veteran Advocate medal, informal but real. She pocketed it, her hand steady. Back at the diner, the news spread fast. Regulars clapped as Sarah walked in, not for show, but respect. She slipped behind the counter, pouring coffee, her scars a badge now. Caleb set his briefcase down, loosening his tie. "You trended higher than the president's speech," he said, half joking. She smirked. "Don't tempt me with power." "Too late," he replied. The internet was ablaze with her testimony. Clips replayed, quotes shared, the scars trending globally. Veterans posted their stories, some raw, some defiant. A private number called that evening. "Sergeant Thompson, this is General Laura Bennett. We're forming a national task force on veteran reintegration and workplace equity. We need your voice." Sarah paused, then said, "Why me?" "Because you showed us what happens when we ignore the problem, and what's possible when we don't." Sarah accepted, her voice firm. That night, the diner hosted a quiet dinner. No media, just veterans. Emily, Tom, Caleb, and Sarah. String lights lit the honor wall. Someone played a guitar, old road songs filling the air. Sarah raised her lemonade. "I never wanted to be an example, just someone who didn't vanish. You all kept me visible." "To staying seen," she said. They raised their glasses, to staying seen. The task force meeting in Chicago was a whirlwind. Policy drafts, legal briefs, outreach plans. Sarah spoke plainly, her words cutting through jargon. A young aide approached after, eyes wide. "You made me see them," she said. Sarah nodded. "Then fight harder." Back home, Ray's Diner became Veterans Row. A city plaque marking the block here. A woman turned silence into justice. Letters poured in, kids, veterans, strangers. One read, "You showed my daughter her scars, don't define her." Sarah kept them in a box labeled proof. The diner's walls grew, more photos, more stories. A Navy cook ran the kitchen now, a Marine taught writing classes, an Army nurse offered mental health screenings. Sarah never stopped showing up, her presence a quiet anchor. One evening a teen snapped a photo of the plaque, whispering, "You're her." Sarah smiled. "So are you if you choose to be." Emily's documentary, The Weight We Carry, aired its final episode, opening with Sarah pouring coffee, closing with her testimony. Donations flooded veteran programs. Schools booked her to speak. Lawmakers called. But Sarah stayed at the diner, where change felt real. Mark's firm dissolved, its executives gone, its legacy a cautionary tale. A few weeks later, a new letter arrived, hand-signed by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, thanking Sarah for reshaping public perception. She tucked it beside a Bronze Star citation on the honor wall. Caleb watched, his voice low. "You did it, Jess." "Not yet," she said, her eyes on the horizon. "This is just the start." A mural rose on the diner's brick wall, a woman in uniform, scars visible, coffee pot in hand, eyes forward. Below it, 3 words: strength in stillness. Sarah touched the plaque one morning, her fingers tracing the words. "It's not just me," she whispered. "It's us." The diner glowed, a sanctuary where scars were stories and silence became a legacy. The war was never about the noise. It was about the quiet moments, the ones where Sarah chose to stand, to pour coffee, to listen when the world tried to shout her down. Her scars weren't a burden. They were proof of a life spent saving others, a life that refused to be erased. She didn't chase glory or vengeance. She chased truth, and in doing so, she carved a path for those who'd been invisible too long. Ray's Diner stands today, not as a monument, but as a heartbeat, a place where veterans find their voice, where strangers leave changed, where a cup of coffee can carry a revolution. Sarah's story reminds us that strength isn't in the loudest shout, but in the steady hand that keeps showing up. We all carry scars, seen or unseen. What matters is what we do with them. Share your story below. Tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe one voice can change the world, subscribe. Because Sarah's strength belongs to us all, if we're brave enough to claim it.